Okay, so ready to dive in. Today we're tackling Milo Yiannopoulos.
Oh, yeah. He's a
We're going to try to figure out, is this guy
big one.
the real deal or just a really good con artist?
Yeah. Grifter or gifted?
Exactly.
That's the question.
So we've got a ton of stuff here. Articles, court documents, even some of his Wikipedia entries.
Oh, yeah. We're going to try to...
It paints a pretty wild picture.
Yeah, well, I mean, the thing about Milo is, like, the sheer range of stuff he's been involved in, right? Like, tech journalist, author, political commentator.
Didn't he even have a little thing with the Kanye West presidential campaign?
He did. Yeah, he did. And that's actually a pretty interesting
That's where what is going.
story in and of itself. But yeah, I mean, it's like he's constantly reinventing himself.
Right. Always got to be the center of attention.
Yeah.
And speaking of attention, he definitely seems to attract controversy like a magnet.
Oh, yeah.
Banned from Twitter,
Yeah.
deplatformed by Patreon, disavowed by CPAC, even Breitbart.
Yeah. I mean, he's definitely someone who pushes boundaries, often to the point of no return.
Yeah, and then there's the really heavy accusations.
Right.
Promoting white nationalism,
Yeah,
condoning pedophilia, exploiting his connections just to get ahead.
It's a lot. Yeah.
It's a lot to unpack for sure. So to kind of understand Milo, we got to go back to the beginning, right?
Absolutely.
So born in England, went to some pretty fancy schools. Early career, he was in tech journalism, even co-founded this online magazine called The Kernel. But
Even then, though, there were already these little hints of controversy to come.
oh, really? Like what?
Well, like the Colonel shutdown, for example, it was messy, lots of allegations of unpaid wages.
So not exactly the champion of the working class that he'd later try to,
Right.
project that image of. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So already we see these inconsistencies, these cracks in the facade.
So then he goes to Breitbart News, which, just for our listeners who might not be familiar, was this right-wing media outlet known for being really provocative, often publishing inflammatory content.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it.
And this is where Milo really starts to blow up, right? This is where his star starts to rise.
Exactly. I mean, at Breitbart, his writing was super incendiary. His opinions were just aggressively contrarian, he was always trying to push buttons. And he quickly gained notoriety within the alt-right movement, which, as you know, is that sort of loose collection of far-right ideologies that were gaining traction online at the time.
Yeah.
He even went so far as to call Breitbart the platform for the alt-right.
Whoa.
So, really cementing his alignment with this burgeoning and some would say dangerous political force.
Yeah, I mean, that's a pretty clear statement, right? He's deliberately aligning himself with a movement that is, to put it mildly, known for its extreme views.
Yeah.
So was he, truly expressing his beliefs, or was this just a calculated move to, build a following? I'm curious. And, what do you think about that?
Yeah, I mean, it's tough to say for certain, right? But his actions definitely speak volumes. This is 2016, the peak of his fame. He lands a $250,000 book deal with Simon & Schuster for his autobiography, Dangerous.
Wow.
Right? This could have been his chance to, really lay out his worldview, in a more nuanced way.
Right.
To engage in some thoughtful debate. But instead,
we get this huge controversy that ultimately tanks the whole book deal.
Yeah.
The resurfacing of these audio recordings where he seems to be defending pedophilia.
Yeah.
It's shocking, honestly. Really hard to even listen to.
It is, yeah.
You said earlier his actions speak volumes.
Yeah.
Do you think this was deliberate propagation, or was he actually, expressing his beliefs?
It's really difficult to say, what was going on in his head at that time. What we do know is the public outcry was intense. Simon & Schuster were under immense pressure to drop him.
Right.
And they did.
He didn't just take it lying down, though, did he?
No, he didn't. He sued Simon & Schuster for breach of contract.
Oh, this is getting juicy.
Right. And this is where it gets even more interesting, because through the lawsuit, some court documents came out that revealed some pretty scathing criticism of Milo's manuscript. His editor at Simon & Schuster, Mitchell Ivers, described it as a superficial work full of incendiary jokes with no coherent or sophisticated analysis of political issues.
Ouch. That's gotta hurt.
Right.
Even for someone like Milo.
Yeah, I mean, it's pretty brutal.
So even the people who were willing to publish him, who saw something in his work, were ultimately disappointed by what he actually delivered.
Yeah, that's the thing.
It makes you wonder, was there ever any real substance there? Or was it all just smoke and mirrors?
It's the question that keeps coming up, right? And as we dig deeper into his career, we're going to see this pattern again and again, the controversy, the inflammatory rhetoric, the eventual backlash and deplatforming. It's like a cycle.
A cycle of, like, self-destruction, almost.
Yeah, you could say that. And it raises some really important questions about, the nature of fame in the digital age, about the responsibility of platforms, and about the fine line between free speech and hate speech.
Right. So much to unpack here.
Yeah.
But I think we've laid some good groundwork.
Yeah, I think so.
So let's take a quick break, and when we come back, we'll dive even deeper into the world of Milo Yiannopoulos.
It's important to remember, the context, right? Milo's rise to fame happened during a really specific time in Western politics.
Yeah, for sure. Things were pretty volatile back then. Like, there was this huge wave of, like, distrust in the establishment, a backlash against, I don't know, what some people saw as, like, too much political correctness.
Exactly. And there were all these anxieties about globalization and, changing demographics.
Right. It was kind of a perfect storm for someone like Milo to come in and, like, capitalize on all that unease.
Yeah, absolutely. He was really good at tapping into that feeling, right, of dissatisfaction. He became a figurehead for a lot of people, especially young white men who felt like they were being ignored, like their voices weren't being heard.
Right. He presented himself as this, like, champion of free speech, this defender of Western values, someone who wasn't afraid to challenge the status quo no matter how offensive or outrageous it got.
Exactly. He was all about pushing buttons.
But that's the thing, right? Like, it's this weird paradox with Milo. He's advocating for open dialogue, for challenging censorship. But at the same time, he's using these, like, really aggressive tactics to silence anyone who disagrees with him.
Oh, totally. Especially online, his followers were notorious for harassing and attacking people who criticized him.
So it's like his version of free speech only applies to people who agree with him.
Pretty much. And that's where the line gets blurry,
Right.
between genuine conviction and manipulation.
Yeah. Was he really passionate about free speech, or was it just a way to, build a following?
It's a good question. A really good question. And then, of course, you have his association with Nick Fuentes.
Oh, yeah, the Groypers.
Yeah, the Groypers. That's a whole other rabbit hole. They're a pretty disturbing example of how these really extreme ideologies can take root online. They're known for being aggressive, disruptive. They harass people. They intimidate their opponents. And they use these online platforms to spread hate speech.
And Milo's connection to Fuentes goes beyond just, like, knowing the guy, right?
Yeah.
He reportedly introduced Fuentes to Steve Bannon.
He did, yeah.
That's a big deal. Like, Bannon was one of the key figures in the alt-right movement. So now you have this direct link between Milo, Fuentes, and Bannon.
Right. And that connection further blurs the lines between, the mainstream right and these fringe white nationalist groups.
So, like, he's trying to mainstream these really extreme views, right?
Maybe. Or maybe he's just, so caught up in his own ambition, so desperate for attention, that he doesn't even realize what he's doing.
And then there's the whole Kanye West thing.
Oh.
Like, that was a wild ride, even for Milo.
Totally. I mean, he played a big role in that campaign, right? He set up that dinner between Kanye and Nick Fuentes.
Which, further fueled those accusations that he was trying to bring white nationalism into the mainstream.
Right. It gave Fuentes a platform, legitimized him in a way.
And then, of course, there were the allegations about the Yeezy porn app.
Oh, yeah, the lawsuit.
Yeah, the lawsuit from former employees who claimed that they were, like, forced to work on this porn app and that they weren't paid.
Yeah, it's pretty messed up. They said they were treated terribly, forced to work long hours, subjected to verbal abuse, even threats.
And Milo's response to all of this? He denied the app even existed.
Right.
He resigned from Yeezy and claimed that he was, like, concerned about Kanye's mental state and business practices. It's crazy. Like, so much drama.
Yeah, it's like a soap opera almost.
Yeah.
But it's not just entertainment, right? There are real consequences to all of this, and it gets us back to that fundamental question.
Yeah. Who is the real Milo Yiannopoulos?
Yeah, it's wild how quickly things can change online.
Yeah.
1 minute you're like the king of the hill, and the next you're basically canceled.
It's like that saying, fame is fleeting.
Right, totally. But it also shows how much power, social pressure and accountability can actually have.
Like in Milo's case, it seems like all the controversies, the connections with extremist figures, and just, like, the increasingly outrageous stuff he was saying, it all kind of led to his downfall.
Yeah.
He got banned from Twitter, remember?
Yeah,
like
yeah.
harassing Leslie Jones.
Right, the comedian.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then Patreon kicked him off, too, for violating their hate speech rules.
And the list just goes on and on. It's like every bridge he built, he ended up burning it down.
And this pattern of getting deplatformed from different places, it brings up some interesting questions about free speech, right? Like,
Yeah.
where's the line in the digital age?
Right, because these platforms like Twitter and Facebook, they have so much influence on what people see and talk about.
Exactly.
So when they decide to ban someone, it has a huge impact no matter what the reason is.
Right. It's a really complicated issue. There's no easy answer.
Yeah, on the one hand, they have a responsibility to protect their users from, like, hate speech and harassment.
Well, of course.
But then there's the worry that deplatforming could be used to just silence anyone who disagrees with you.
Right, to stifle debate.
Yeah, and Milo, being Milo, he used this whole debate to his advantage.
Oh, totally.
He made himself out to be this martyr for free speech, this victim of the liberal elite.
Oh, absolutely. Like they were trying to silence him.
Exactly.
Classic Milo.
But then he tries to rebrand himself, right? Like, he comes out as ex-gay and starts promoting reparative therapy, which, is a pretty harmful and widely discredited practice.
Yeah, most medical experts would say it's not a good idea.
It just felt kind of desperate, like he was grasping at straws, trying to find a new audience, new controversy to latch onto.
Yeah, it's hard to take it seriously.
So where does all of this leave him now? What's, his legacy? What impact did he actually have?
Well, even though he's not as prominent as he used to be, he definitely had an impact.
For sure.
Whether you like him or not, he contributed to the rise of a certain type of right-wing online culture, one that's all about trolling and irony.
Right, and using humor to kind of disguise these really hateful ideologies.
Exactly. It's like this weird mix of being funny and being offensive.
Right, and he made it really hard to tell what he actually believed versus what was just for show.
Yeah, totally. So I think that's probably his biggest legacy. Normalizing this way of communicating that's meant to be divisive, inflammatory, and often just straight up bigoted.
Oh, so after all this, after this deep dive, what do you think? Grifter or gifted?
Honestly, I think it's pretty clear that he's more interested in promoting himself and making money than actually fighting for any cause.
Yeah.
He's definitely a talented communicator, no doubt about that, but he uses his skills to manipulate and exploit people, not to educate or inspire.
He's almost like a cautionary tale, right?
Yeah.
Like, charisma and controversy can get you a lot of attention, but it can also lead to self-destruction.
Exactly.
And it reminds us that we, as consumers of information, need to be really careful.
Yeah.
We need to think critically, be discerning about what we believe, and be wary of anyone who profits from outrage and division.
Well said.
So to all of you deep divers out there, keep asking those tough questions, keep digging for the truth, and never stop challenging the status quo. That's what it's all about.
Until next time, stay curious.